Welcome everyone to tonight's event, Symbiosis, the intersection between art and architecture. My name is Bryce Bounds, and I am the AIA Fort Lauderdale 2025 Vice President, as well as the AIA Florida Young Architect Representative at AIA National. I would like to thank FAU for their support in allowing us to use these great facilities today. I'd also like to thank all of you for taking the time to share this evening with us. I'd like to introduce you to tonight's distinguished panelists. We have Mr. Arty Molinari. He is the principal of All Terrain Architects LLC and Tremco's TPC Field Support Specialist. He is the immediate past president of AIA Fort Lauderdale, and he holds a bachelor's of architecture here from FAU. Next we have Shermeen Yousif. She is the assistant professor here at FAU, the director of the Environmental Design and Natural Materials Lab here at the FAU School of Architecture, an Acadia board of directors member, an AIA associate, and an ACSA member. Finally, we have Jose Lobo. He is AIA Fort Lauderdale's 2022 past president and a partner at SOW Design Studios. We are going to give each panelist an opportunity to present tonight and ask that each addresses the following questions in their presentation. I'm going to present the questions to all three of you. I'd ask you that you probably try and weave them in as opposed to asking them separately. That way you get a chance to express yourself as you see fit. So the questions that we're hoping you address tonight are, number one, artists and architects are very similar in that in what they are considered are creative and follow similar processes to create an end product. Tell us about your creative process and how you take ideas and make them into architecture. Artists typically are inspired by other artists, and it can be seen in their artwork. Tell us about architects or artists that have inspired the three of you. Number three, sometimes the best art created by architects are the sketches and models they've developed to paint the picture of the concept. Can you share some of your favorite models or sketches that you've developed along the way? Number four, recently South Florida has been producing internationally renowned projects that have been celebrated in magazines and other media. Can you share some of your favorite architecture in South Florida that is not your own work? We're going to follow all three presentations with questions, so we're going to wait until all three of them have had an opportunity to present. With that being said, I'm going to start with Arty. So if you could come up and present your projects first.
Do I have to come on? All right. What was the question again? No. So, let's see if this is working. So, with me, I'm a bit of a yes man, so I'll take on any project in the beginning, and then I'll probably regret 80% of them afterwards. But what I've learned to do since I got licensed 5 years ago was I need to be excited about it, and really the only way that that can happen is usually with the client. So if the project sucks, at least the client needs to be a good person and morale needs to be high at all meetings, during all correspondence, even the way they write their email. If I feel good about that communication, I'm going to feel a lot better about the project. These are just some of these are really old drawings actually. Some are from school here, like the one in the middle, that was a project I did at FAU for the Boca Raton main campus when we were proposing a hotel that the school still actually really wants to do. Haven't done it yet, and that was 15 years ago. But no, even with the diagram, like on the upper left, like there's no straight line to, I think, anyone's design process, and for me it's kind of like the stock market trends. It's up and down, inside and out. So for me, as long as I have a healthy level of communication, I'm going to feel pretty good about the project no matter what. That top left sketch, I did that in like 2012, but I found it in the archives and I was like, I just got to put it in. But kind of like my drawing on the top right there, everything I seem to do is always an uphill battle. Even when I get the simplest of a project, like the other day I had a client who just wants to do a slab for the dumpsters that go outside the gas station. It's like, how hard can this be? It's a 15 by 5 slab, 4 inches thick. I'll probably make $2 grand profit on the job, whatever. No, I got to go through a lot of bureaucratic BS, and let's just say it took 6 months to get the guy a slab. So that's what I mean about uphill battles. Sometimes doing a single-family custom home from scratch is easier than the simplest of commercial projects in a big city like Fort Lauderdale. So that's kind of what I meant by that. I don't skip leg day. I really don't do legs in the gym. I forgot I put that. But when it comes to architecture, I definitely don't skip leg day. Every day is leg day in architecture. Let's see, how can we relate this back now to the artist? So, I found that in my career, I haven't shown too many or really any of the projects that I work on. Not because I'm not proud of them, but because that's not really what my career has turned into. I feel like I'm like one of the biggest advocates for our profession locally, and the reason that seems to happen is definitely because of my involvement with AIA, but also my involvement with the School of Architecture at FAU. I also visit a lot of other schools of architecture around the state. Because of my position with Tremco as a building enclosure specialist, they send me to many different states where I'm looking at roofs, facades, and while I'm there, I figured I might as well just go knock on a firm's door, especially if they've got a sister company or office, locally in South Florida. So I find myself, networking a lot, being asked to go on podcasts and bravely talk about what it is to be an architect. If you haven't heard that on YouTube, I probably should re-listen to it and maybe ask him to bring it down, because I know I said some extracurricular things, but I enjoy it though, because it's getting the younger perspective out there about architects. Artists, when I was going into school, as much as I love to draw, paint, and do things like that, my daughter, better artist than I am now, which is crazy. She's only 12. But when I enjoyed doing those things, I felt like it wasn't going to be a career where I could be financially successful. And now looking back, especially as a dad, I feel like that's stinking thinking. If you're really passionate about something, you'll find a way to make a living from it. Thank God I'm still very passionate about architecture, and I'm able to pay the bills and show my family a good life from doing it, but it is bloody hard. I'll admit that. I'm sure any other architect in the room can attest. But yeah, I managed to establish my own firm, kind of a one-man show, but 1099ing all my employees and consultants. And then I found ways to engage my children who are in the back row there pretty much at every event possible. And that has made it all worth the while. Hope that answers question number one. Or I just carry on. What's number two? I gotta remember number two now.
Would you like it from?
Hold on. No, that doesn't help. Let's see. Oh, okay, yeah, so architects, they influence me. So, coming from London, England, my first love definitely was Norman Foster. At 9 years old, I came across a documentary of his on the BBC and was just fascinated with his work and in the fact that his firm, Foster and Partners, has pretty much developed most of the London skyline. It was really easy to get that face to face and be able to touch his work. So he was definitely my first biggest inspiration. And then when I started architecture school, I then stopped loving Norman for a little bit and moved on to Renzo Piano, mainly for his sketches. The way he would diagram a section, it just completely changed the way that I thought. And then I had a professor at Broward College called Claudio Noriega, if any of you know him. He always used to talk about the plan to section relationship. And I found myself, if my plan, I would always start with a section, and then I would somehow derive the plan from the section. And I was like, look, plan to section relationship. It's like, you're taking it too literal, too literal. You know, but as long as it looked good, I didn't mind at the time. You know, we're in our creative stages where we're not getting things built back then, so I didn't feel bad about it. But definitely Renzo there influenced that. Let's see if I can get to the next one. Maybe we'll link actually. Just don't have to skip too long. Oh, here we go. Richard Rogers passed away last year. There's a theme going on here. So a lot of these architects are either British or Italian so far, and I'm British, American, Italian. So that's definitely a coincidence, but I kind of like it. Richard Rogers, what I loved about him was how he created the exoskeleton buildings. You know, he would take the structure and bring it to the outside. Articulation over decoration, that's like a motto of mine. You know, if you have a beautiful structure and then you cover up with drywall, and it's going to throw up. So, you know, nothing against it, but for me, I just need, if you've got some beautiful structure going on, you might as well show it off, and no one does it better than Richard Rogers. And he actually partnered up with Renzo Piano many a time, starting at the Centre Pompidou in Paris, and that kind of got that whole movement going from the 70s. If you don't like Frank Gehry, I don't know what to say. I mean, obviously it's extremely, out there. I never tried to copy or do anything similar to him, but you can't deny his creativity. And then it's hilarious. I think I can draw way better than him, but that sketch on the bottom left can go for like 20 grand. So, he's doing something right. He's also like 85 now, so I guess it doesn't matter. But, build out, put him on the map pretty much, and ever since then, everyone wants a building that looks like that. He's just a fun guy too. If you've ever watched any TV or documentary of him on any, you want to talk about outspoken, that guy definitely makes me feel a lot better. John Portman, the reason I love that guy is because he was a architect developer. So even though he designed some of the most beautiful lobbies, I took 90% of these photos, by the way. I try not to take my images from Google unless I have to. But yeah, when I went to Atlanta and I saw this guy's buildings, I was like, oh, they look okay from the outside. And then I went inside and I was like, whoa, this guy is talented at first. And then when I found out that he was like a multi-millionaire, I was like, you can't be an architect, sure. But he's obviously a very clever man because he was able to do his own deals and then design them. So, how could you not respect and want to try and figure that out too? And then, for those of you who don't know Antoine Predock in the top right kind of took what Frank Lloyd Wright would do, where his structures would organically grow out of the ground. But what I love about Antoine in particular is that he was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and respecting the raw materials and the adobe type construction that has been there for 10,000 years, he would implement that into his buildings, kind of like you see there at the Austin City Hall, whether it was subterranean or growing out very organic structures, but then at the same time still very raw and futuristic at the time. I think I have one more slide up. I couldn't pick just 2 or 3. I had to, once I was getting into it, I felt bad, and you'll see why. How could you not think of Daniel Libeskind as being an influence? The first time I went to the Holocaust Museum in Berlin, I'm Roman Catholic, and I felt Jewish by the time I came out of that building. I mean, it was unbelievable. And to have a floor plan that snakes like that and get away with it and get it built, I mean, we would get killed for doing something like that in school at the time when I was there. But this guy just made architecture of that stature not only popular, but a movement. And I don't think anyone does it as well as he does. Plus, I like his sketches. You'll notice when you see some of my sketches that I take a little bit of Renzo and Libeskind and Norman, and that's kind of the technique that I developed in school. And then Shigeru Ban, this guy's unbelievable. Wood construction is still arguably my favorite, but the reason why this guy is extra special is because he can do it in more than a sustainable and resilient way. He can do it in a recycling way, upcycling even. When Christchurch got hit with the earthquake a decade ago, and the cathedral that I literally have a picture of my family in front of, because I got family in New Zealand, the church was completely demolished. He comes back with cardboard tubes and builds a earthquake-resistant structure that is a temporary structure, meaning that he didn't really even have to permit it. And now it's a permanent building, so go figure. And then if you look at the joinery, that's a Swiss business headquarters somewhere in Switzerland. But the joinery that he's following them, respecting the Japanese architecture, they don't even use nails and bolts. You literally just thread, you're doweling basically. The building can actually be deconstructed without damaging anything. Just remarkable. It's something that we will strive to try and do. Alright, I don't remember this question. Oh, stuff that I've worked on. So I haven't built a model since school, so I had to just draw images in the archives and from my portfolio. In FAU particularly, in upper division, we focused on a lot of group model building activities, and then we would focus on putting individual design into the group model. So you'll see in that top right, that was actually done by 10 of us. I had the crazy idea of using a 3/4 inch threaded steel rebar and then bolting it on either side of a 2x4, which we definitely regretted later, but it looked really awesome and it weighed like 200 pounds. But it looked really cool, right? So it's almost like women, like you don't care how you feel as long as you look good. It's like it was one of those situations. And then even the lower left, using a simple chipboard model with the ice cream sticks. I always worked through school, and I had 2 children at the time when I was in school, and I had to be, I don't want to say lazy, I never was lazy, but there were times where I was just like, I gotta get this done, and I gotta figure out how to do it as quick as possible. If you zoom in, look carefully at the lower center image, you'll see the glue gun, how I was lazy and didn't want to pull away the cobwebs from it. I didn't care, man. As long as I got the idea across, it was good enough for me. And I had the philosophy, if you can't draw it or build it, you can't do it. So a lot of my friends, they would come out with these amazing drawings. So I'm like, no, build it. Can't do it? No, doesn't count. So I only built what I could draw and vice versa. But now with AI and everything, you know, I'll give the younger guys a pass. I actually really enjoyed the sketch that I did of, that was John U. Lloyd State Park. I think it's got a different name now. Over by the Intercoastal in Fort Lauderdale by the sea. When I first moved here from England, I was fascinated with all the boardwalks that they have here through like the Everglades and the parks. And it was always done out of heavy timber and wood type structures, pressure treated of course. And that particular bridge had been there since the 70s, and it looked pristine at the time. And I had to draw it. It was just one of those like 10-minute sketches where you stand there and you do your best. And then I went home and did my best to like try and like give some more life to it, but still have a vivid memory of that place just because of that sketch. I keep all my sketchbooks in my closet, and from time to time, if I'm like pissed at a client, I'll just go to my sketchbook, and if I'm not going to journal, I'll just flick through some of my drawings, and it makes me feel better because I don't really do this stuff, to be honest, anymore. This is this is still a variety of projects. FAU and Broward College, the wooden one at the top, upper right and lower left. That was the first model that I really actually felt proud of when I went to Broward College and got my associate's degree in art here. And it was crazy. I remember moving out of my apartment. Sienna was probably like 3 at the time, and we still had a small stick shift pickup truck, and I was stupid enough to put that model in the back. But I took 441, so I knew I wasn't going to go fast. And that thing still went bye-bye. And I'm just glad I got the photos of it. But it literally flew out of the back of the truck, hit someone's windscreen. I was like, if they don't say nothing, I'm not going to do anything, and just kept going Florida style, So yeah, crazy. I'm glad like I said, I got the images there. Renderings, I didn't show too many of them, but I really enjoyed the one I did in the middle there because that was part of the FAU hotel project that I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, and this was like a interior courtyard retail student hangout space, and then I don't know what I was doing there, but I was kind of copying in DC how they have the really long pond, where they have the access to the Capitol and Abraham Lincoln's Memorial, so I was going for that there. I don't know if I have anything else. Oh, okay, question 4, good. Other architects' work. So locally, we got a lot of talent. Sorry for the architects here if I didn't include your work. But again, I like to show images that I've personally photographed, so it was real easy. I just went on my Instagram and I snipped photos that I've taken. I went back all the way to like 2012. So the upper left is called the Bass Residence for Strang Design, and the lower left is the finished product. And so I got to tour. Actually, I think Heather, did you go on that tour with me?
I was there.
You were there, right? Yeah, you're probably in that photo somewhere. But yeah, so I mean, it was really cool. I really enjoy what Max's office does. It's not really the way I design, but the way the finished product always comes out. It's like really hard to not enjoy it. And then the landscape architects that they seem to team up with, just killer oases and hidden gems. Like there's a few of these actually down the way here on the Los Olas Islands. So, Porsche Design Tower. I was fascinated with that building because when I was in school, that was a hole in the ground, and as I got older, I just watched the thing grow, and I didn't realize that it had the first ever, the elevated parking lot. I believe in the state, it might have been one of the first actually in the country to do it at the level that they did it at anyway. And every time I drive through Golden Beach and Sunny Isles, I have to like stop at the Starbucks right across the street and just stare at that thing for a while, even though it's got many neighbors now. It was like the only building for a while, and now that whole stretch of 6 miles is just full of buildings, and some of them are even taller than that one, and that one's 600 feet maybe. Jean Kingles, he nearly did a project right out the way here, and it failed. But when he managed to do the, oh gosh, I forgot the name of that, I just call it Twisting Towers right now, but it's called something in the Bay. You can see the photo that I took at the lower right there, and to see it when it was completed, even though it's pretty simple compared to the stuff that he's done internationally, it's just cool when a lot of famous architects from different parts of the world are starting to do buildings, in our backyard that we get to see frequently. The lower left is actually a project that I worked on. I know we weren't supposed to do that, but my old boss is really the one who did it. He was the architect of record, but I did the CDs, so I guess that doesn't count, right? Because it's not mine. But I really enjoyed working on that project, and Gallo Architects, they're one of the reasons I have the amount of knowledge and really good at getting permits in Brown County, because they trained me to do that. I put the Dania Beach casino in there just because I thought that was funny. That building was atrocious before they renovated it. I think Architectonica might have been the one that got to renovate it, but all they did was put the dry design rain screen cladding over it, and it really transformed it. And actually, I have a better photo. I don't know if I picked that one, but still. Top right, any of you who know Dan Dockham, probably Fort Lauderdale's most famous architect, in my opinion. He did a lot of heavy timber structures throughout the city, and if you ever have the privilege of, if you've been to Maikai, if you remember that restaurant, that's like a simple one, but that particular image, the current tenant is Brinterson Structural Engineers, and that's one of my engineers that I use as a consultant. And when I go into their office, even though I'm just picking up plans, I ask if I can just hang out for 10 minutes and just sit in the lobby, because I want to just stare up at the joints. Let's see what else. Hard Rock Stadium, even though it's cool, but I put it in there because I believe, gosh, who did that one? HKS maybe. I've got a lot of friends who work at HKS. It is cool. I mean, when it was Joe Robbie Stadium, it was a pretty generic-looking bowl with the unique ramps on the four corners. But once they did the renovation with these 100-foot cantilevers and the spears at each corner at night, it's a really cool-looking place. And then the Swimming Hall of Fame. Maybe Architectonica again, but that's a really cool place if you've ever gone to Bass Pro Shops. It's right off of Sterling and 95. We also have now the highest and coolest diving board in the world that won an AIA award. So double whammy if you ever go down there and you get to see some cool architecture. Fontainebleau, Miami. I went there once, and that was for a Zaha Hadid ACSA lecture. That was really cool. I got to meet her a couple years before she passed away, and it was actually an awful presentation. She reeked of cigarettes, but she's just a badass, so like you're just happy to be in her presence, right? And what better place than to do it than Fontainebleau. I got Styles headquarters in there because they just dominate this city. They have an architecture firm, they're a development company, real estate. They're a major influence in Broward County, so I kind of was paying respect to them. The Diplomat, that's the image on the right. When I was a kid visiting from England, my dad took me to the beach there with my sister, and all of a sudden a plane flew through that atrium underneath. I don't know if anyone ever remembers that, has heard of that, you can YouTube it. That was wild. Like, I'm on the beach, this building's brand new in like 2006 or something like that, and a plane just comes flying like 20 feet off the ground, and it went through that building when we watched it on the news after the fact. We got 2 professors at the University of Miami who did the first ever CLT structure in South Florida, and that's their house on the lower left when it was going, well, you know, the structure's up now with the CLT, that's cross-laminated timber, and they're putting the air barrier on right now. But the house looks super cool. If you ever get the chance to go down to Coconut Grove, it's definitely worth checking out. They're the nicest people ever. They'll invite you in, just tell them you're an architect or an architecture student. Next thing you know, you have a beer with them.
What's the name?
Yeah, Coconut Grove.
No, I know what's the name of the
The people, their last name is Meyer, M-E-Y-E-R, Chris and Shauna. Yes. Yeah, sweet people. And the fact that they're professors and practicing and just doing everything, they're great role models. And then as a soccer player and die-hard fan, couldn't help but put into Miami Stadium, even though it's supposed to be a temporary structure, it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. And I believe Architectonica did that as well. I think that might be it. Yeah, it's not going on anymore, so thank you.
Graduated, but not as famous as in terms of AIA Fort Lauderdale, but I am interested in presenting today because I also want to tell you a little bit about me and why my lecture or my presentation may be a little bit different because is it responsive? It's not. Okay, so one thing relevant to the presentation about me is that I did my undergrad study in University of Baghdad. I'm from Iraq, that's Nahali, but she's British, Iraqi, I'm just Iraqi. But my master's in Germany, the SOW Institute of Architecture at the Bauhaus, so you see a lot about the Bauhaus as my influence, and my PhD Texas area. So 3 continents I studied architecture. And maybe that's why I start with something when I was prompted to present on intersection of art and architecture. I tried to prepare a lecture on it, and this came to my mind, and maybe because it's a very important essay, I wanted to talk a little bit about it. The essay became a book and it was written by Colin Rowe and Robert Slutsky. And I think they're very important references when we talk about art and architecture. And I learned about Colin Rowe in my graduate degree in Texas A&M. And I think he's very amazing at criticizing modernist architecture and also linking art and architecture. So in his essay, and why is this relevant? I think Colin Rowe describes this phenomenon in architecture and art, where there is literal versus phenomenal transparency. And we appreciate phenomenal transparency because there is spatial complexity to it. And I think that's relevant to postmodernists and even relevant to us right now. And just to give you, for example, what's the difference? For Rowe and Slutsky, there is distinction between quality of substance, like a window is transparent, but then there is also an inherent quality of organization that we care about in architecture. So there's a perceptual transparency versus conceptual transparency. There is transparency of visibility versus transparency of understanding, like observation versus interpretation. And I think we can appreciate architecture that has more of phenomenal transparency more. And these are 2 artworks. On the left side, maybe you can read it as more glass-like and literal transparency, and on the right side, for Colin Rowe, it's more of the phenomenal transparency. And what he describes is that Cubist art and movement was really influential for modernist movement, right? So there's a huge correlation and influence from Cubist work, especially later Cubist work. And he praises works like late work of Cézanne, for example. And I think that becomes important and interesting also for architects like Eisenman and postmodernist architects. And this connection between Cubist paintings and modernist architecture has to do with layering and perception. So they argue in the essay that modernist architecture does not simply express transparency through this literal quality, but engages in Cubist-like spatial ambiguity, right? So this late Cézanne work, for example, can be characterized by extreme simplifications, the frontality, the suppression of depth, the contracting of space, definition of light sources, tipping forward of objects, restricted palette, oblique and rectilinear grids, and propensities towards peripheric development are all characteristics of what he calls analytical cubism. And later he compares architecture work, for example, Villa Agarge, Stein by Corbusier, and he compares it to I think the artist is Leger, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, and he compares it, and for him, this is phenomenal transparency. And why is it phenomenal? Because for him, the Villa Corbusier's facade at Garches mirrors Bernard Leger's work, Three Faces, the painting on the left, because they both have these layered depths. Rather than focusing on a picture plane, Corbusier emphasizes a frontal viewpoint, carving depth into the facade in a manner similar to Leger's use of effects in his paintings. So for that type of quality, we are engaged in our attention, we are engaged in phenomenal transparency. So for some reason, we have this achievement of Corbusier that has equal quality to the Cubist painting. Now, we can also look at Corbusier's villa as another kind of manifestation to his still life work. So there's a comparison and there's a relationship between Corbusier's still life, that you can look at it into layers, and also Villa at Garches, so you can see the axonometry. I think he also criticizes or analyzes the Bauhaus. So I took classes in the Bauhaus in Dessau. And in the Bauhaus, of course, our professors would just celebrate and we worship modernists. And sometimes they critique postmodernist architecture. We cannot just criticize modernists like that. There is a huge agenda of respect for modernism. But also, for Conan Rowe, I do appreciate his analysis, thinking or looking at the Bauhaus as a literal transparency example, right? So he compares the Bauhaus to, let's look at next slide, to this artwork, and this is what he, for him is that, well, this is Maholi's picture that shows conventional pre-Cubist foreground, middle ground, and background. And in spite of a rather casual interweaving of surface and elements introduced to destroy the logic of this deep space, Maholi's picture can be submitted to only one reading. So he looks at these two, like art and architecture examples, as both of similar quality of literal transparency. There's one reading to them. It's not like Villa Garches, Corbusier has this kind of layering and depth and spatial complexity. So with this, I want to answer the questions like Arty, and in answering the first question, so the artists and architects that are considered creative in a way in the same process, and about my process, I'm going to give you an example of a project that I have worked on in the last year. And of course, my process, because as a researcher, my PhD has to do with machine learning from cluster analysis, and then working at FAU, I was collaborating with professors here at the school and working on AI. So for me, the question whether AI can influence the design process and the workflow becomes important, and how AI can augment creativity. This recent project, I was investigating concepts that AI may not understand very well, which is vernacular logic and vernacular concepts. So, as we know, AI has been trained, or they have this data set agnostic training, which means the data set may not just be architecture. And as a person who's interested in AI learning, architecture drawings and conventions and concepts, I was trying my best to overcome certain biases in AI models. And I was trying to input maybe references like Florida vernacular, like the Cracker House. And I was communicating with AI with text prompts and images. And I tried to achieve better results when I input an image with text prompts. It respected the vernacular architecture of Florida, the Cracker House, much better when I had to combine certain inputs. The process evolves, in a way that is progressive when you feed it certain input like images, sketches, drawings, and you get feedback, and then you reiterate with another kind of process or phase, and then evolving towards more modernist version of the Florida vernacular. I'm trying to skip to the next one. Okay, so it's a process of me interacting with AI so that it learns my concept and becomes concept specific and size and context specific. So in this case, I think it's not working. Yes, yeah, in this case it got better when I tried to give another text prompt. Yeah. So you see the house on the right is elevated, it has a central kind of breezeway, it has some kind of like qualities, but it's getting more modernist, and we can skip to the next one. And then I tried to input more images, more text prompts, trying to modernize maybe, with keeping sustainable ideas. I tried to understand if AI can give me results where it's more towards more sustainability, like elevated building for flood scenarios, like shading and canopies and PV panels. And these became better as results. Okay, and then I gave it into Runway ML to create a video of how we can kind of conceive that in three-dimensional, and it gave me something different in the end, so the video actually became very creative interpretation. And then zooming in into some of these examples, I think this process is valuable, and I'm trying to teach here at our school, because we know that AI has certain biases and it was trained in a certain way, but I think the process can lead to creative output if we engage in this process. Interacting, knowing what AI is good at producing and how can we feed it and how can we control it, how to maintain agency. This is another process with my students back in spring 2022, and then we can, and you see their workflow was very different because they had multiple phases of AI training. Now those models are now maybe outdated because they were only like good for certain resolution of images, but students were interested in grid systems and natural systems and reading those two systems. And each column of this workflow is a training of an AI model. So the agenda for the study I was teaching is that how can we develop the design process where AI is used at each design task, and how can we move forward from one AI output to feed into another AI's model input. And this process also was in collaboration with Professor Daniel Bolshevik at our school. You can skip. So the students took certain examples like computationally generated cellular automata, grid system, other grid systems, and feeding them into AI training. You can skip. And then in the end they process and also breeding with natural systems like my they process this kind of pattern or system into using other methods of processing, and they also ran other AI models to create different systems, like a shell, like a skeletal, like another kind of envelope strategy. And then they tried to three-dimensionalize this system. So the patterns that AI gave them became three-dimensional in their own post-processing way. We can skip to the next one. And then that's one outcome. Now this is highly speculative, and I think practicing architects can look at it from very different perspective. I think this is the beauty of teaching architecture here at the school. You can do whatever you want. Once you graduate, there's very much constraints and pragmatic aspects, but I think the students also looked at it as a way for future speculative design, where mycelium becomes structural and material, which is actually a research happening. So mycelium is now really studied carefully as a future building material. And that's their section. Zooming in. Now, regarding the second question, architects and artists that influenced me, I know that Kandinsky, for example, was really influential for the Bauhaus school. And there was collaboration between Mies and Kandinsky. And I think Kandinsky is important for modernist movement in the Bauhaus, just because he has these compositions that at the time were really influential. And he was teaching also at the Bauhaus. So there is a relationship between Kandinsky's work, between Bauhaus as a school, and then between certain design or graphic and poster of the Bauhaus. Now, for those who may not know, the University of Baghdad, the campus that I studied my undergrad, was designed by Molinari, the founder of the Bauhaus. So for me, I did undergrad in a Bauhaus design, and I moved to master's in the actual Bauhaus. So if you don't know about that, but there was the architecture collaborative. 3 architects, one of them is Mobius, or the leader, and of course, Mobius was the director at the Harvard GST. And one of the students was Iraqi, and he had connection with the king. So at the time in the 50s, Iraq had a monarchy, there was a king, and they invited important architects, including Corbusier and Frank Lloyd Wright and other. But one of the projects that was realized was actually Mobius campus. Now, the story I like to believe in, that he flew in a helicopter and he selected the site. So there was a Tigris River surrounding the site, and I think he tried to incorporate a courtyard system. So if you look at the master plan, there was a courtyard system, which is a famous example or system for Islamic cities, to reference the local and vernacular cities. Courtyards are great, even sustainably. Even now, if you run energy modeling and daylight and everything, courtyards are great systems in architecture. So we tried to incorporate. So I live in a building where everything is, we study, we worship the building, the color, the feature, the exposed concrete. So we studied the Bauhaus, and we lived in the building of a Bauhaus concrete. We can skip to the next one. Now, Zaha, of course, I haven't met her, unfortunately, but I do think that she was influential because in Iraq, as an architect, we worship Zaha. I mean, we were very proud of her. Unfortunately, now after she passed away, there is a new Central Bank of Iraq, a project that's now being realized by Zaha in his office. Yeah, only now. But I think Zaha's art is great because back in the 80s, she had this amazing, I call architecture, especially the right one, because for me, that gave birth to her realized project. And I think she was very skilled also mathematically. So for her, I've seen an interview where she argues that all my designs could have been built, even the ones in the 80s. But I think her realized projects became the 1990s and later. But it's fascinating that as architects, I think we're inherently artists, if I can say that. Moving to the third questions, certain sketches, certain models. I lost most of my piece. I moved between 3 continents, but I can show you in my master's in Germany, we had a prompt to just do freehand drawing, but on the right side is more spatial, without architecture. We try to do layering, like Colin Rohr's transparency, but that's the result. And on the left side is more futuristic scene, which I think is worse. I like the right side more. Yes. Now, recently, even my art, my speculation was on AI. Whether you agree with me or not, I'm working with AI as my friend. So AI is helping me visualize ideas and concepts. So this is a prompt we received. I think our director shared with me also an exhibition, Constructing Futures AI, in Detroit. It was in September, and the prompt was, can you give us AI-generated images where it communicates the future of construction? So I think the future of construction is robots and robotic arms and robot engineers on site constructing. And I think with that, if you have this kind of capability, then our structures will look like these complex structures that it can be like realized without us thinking about the complexity of how these projects can be realized. Yes, sorry. And then a recent project also working with AI, but more towards pragmatic, sustainable solutions. So I went with certain conceptualization of like what is a building that can have these cantilever overhangs and balconies that are protected, elevated gardens, and aspects that I think are interesting for Florida apartment buildings, but also back and forth between simulations. So I also teach environmental technology courses where we run simulations and energy modeling data. So this back and forth process between AI for conceptualization and creative exploration, and then actual modeling of these designs and making sure that they really perform with simulation. So I did follow a process where this became a net zero apartment building, of course, speculative. You can see it. And then regarding the last question, for me, local architecture, I think Arty did a very good job. So I do love this building. Miami, South Beach, when I go, if I look at this building, it makes me happy. I think there's something amazing about how it's just a structure that we designed it in a very boring way, with the columns and it's celebrated. The structure for me is beautiful. And these different levels, different kind of heights, I think this tells us that even systems that we think we don't need to design, a structure can be celebrated and rethought. I'm also fascinated by ETH Zurich, the famous school program architecture where they rethink floor slabs and concrete floor slabs, and they have amazing research on that. So I think we can rethink even systems that we keep repeating and designing in a boring way. And then the next one, Grimshaw Architects, I think did an amazing job in the Frost Museum. I go there often. I think it's a great building. The way that there is this beautiful courtyard breezeway and the elevators in the middle, for subtropical climate, I think it's a very successful building. And I've been to the kind of highest level. I've seen the PV panels on the roof. I've seen so many features. So I think it resembles that a sustainable design can look also aesthetically amazing. And that's what I think. Thank you.
Happy to see you guys participate in the AIA events. Kind of waiting to be around for this one event, which is very exciting. There's another talk tomorrow night. Just remind you of in case you can attend. So I'm going to talk about the work that we do at the firm. Fortunately, I have Mauricio here with me. He's our creative director in the office. He can help me a little bit with these slides. I call this first phase, which is about creativity, the creative process in architecture. I called it elements and principles. And this goes back to I'm teaching studio as well as we were going through the conceptual phase. And I was trying to tell the students about process of conceptualizing a project, and I just broke it down to elements and principles. Elements would be all the lines, circles, shapes, and forms that we all know. Eventually becomes a program, right? And then principles is where the richness of the design comes from. So I picked this one house. Oh, by the way, half of our work is houses, and the other house is resorts and hotels. So you're going to see a little bit of both. But I put this one here because that sketch at the top was a 5-minute sketch talking to a client on the phone. He told me, I have this site. I need to know right now because I'm in due diligence and it's over tomorrow, and I need to know if I should buy it or not. It's a 6,000 square foot house and I want to build on it. Does it fit? So I started doodling, and I did that sketch. And then I sent it to him. He's like, so what does this mean? So I did the other sketch. It's like, give him an idea of what the house looks like, right? In the process, we came up with some models, and we decided like coming up with ideas for the house, and we were very excited about the street, cover up the garage, and create that courtyard that makes it so special. We open to the sky, and then we sent it to the client, and he sent us back like 35 copies. So that kind of I'm talking about it's about the creative process, right? Which starts with concept, and it goes into schematic design development, construction architect, all that stuff. So it doesn't end until the house is built, the key to the client, right? So that was an next iteration, and these are the final renderings of the house, which if I would tell you the amount of hours, it would be like it's crazy. Arty's right. I mean, this profession it's about rigor, right? The amount of time you put into the project. So the next one is this beautiful island that both Mauricio and I feel like we shouldn't be doing anything to it. It's in the Caribbean. It's called Samson Cay, and we're super excited to work on a project because we've been given the responsibility to design something that can fit well to this island, and that is meaningful, right? But what I can say is that it's an ultra luxury resort that will start from here on down all the way to here. It's going to be 33 bungalows and like 40 something luxury homes. And then in order to take care of the people that come and visit the island, we need to have a village of 150 people that are going to take care of all these guests that are going to come. So we have the executive architect. We're tasked to design the village, to design everything about the operations of this hotel. And then we're supposed to take the drawings from MK27 out of Brazil and make them part of that set construction documents, and then oversee the construction of all that stuff. So it's going to be a long process. What's considered to be 4 years might turn into 6 or 7. I don't know. So when they called us and they said, we need to start thinking about the village, that was on a Friday, and then Saturday night I get this rendering from Mauricio. And it's just like, I figured it out. So I'm like, great, now we don't have to do much, right? And but I put it here because this is the essence of architecture, right? This is where we go back to. We always go back to these thoughts that come from in this case Mauricio, and he drew it and he got everybody excited about it. We were a little bit skeptical about showing it on that first meeting, but I think they fell in love with it, and then it not only gave us great credibility about how we would design this thing, but eventually it became a challenge, right? And so everything is going to be guided by that one rendering, but things are changing every day. As of yesterday, it changed again. So here's some of the sketches that are related to that. And it's an ongoing project, so maybe next time around I'll show you guys what direction it's going. The next question, it has to do with what architects inspired us. And here in Florida, we have Sarasota, the School of Design, School of Architecture, and Paul Rudolph, Jim Levy, and many have kind of like established this architectural, tropical architectural modern culture in South Florida. That's picked up in South Florida finally because we had to be Mediterranean up until the 90s, right? Eventually just started shifting. And how do you do modern architecture the right way? So you have to learn from the masters of the thing here. That's always like the playground back in the days. And a lot of these same people influence our friend Max Frank. In this case, I put a picture of the compound which he designed, compound in Coconut Grove, because it has materials that are influencing a lot of the materials that we're using in Coconut Grove in modern architecture to sort of bring natural elements into construction. In this case, wood-like and concrete. In this project, the client came to us because they wanted us to renovate their house. And the only thing that we kept was this beautiful wall, stone wall you can see here. It was designed by Max Frank, by the way. It was an old house. I think Max was one of his first projects was to renovate this house. So he came up with this facade out of stone. And then we started playing with materials. What materials would go well with that stone wall. And we continued applying different materials that would make sense. This kind of goes back to that first shot where you see the concrete and the stone. And in the process, we lost a little bit of that. But this was the end result in which we kept Max's wall here, and then we had to compose everything back so we could get a cohesive elevation out of the exercise. And then influenced by, we work a lot with MK27, but a lot of the Brazilian architects are bringing in a lot of influence to South Florida as well. And in those initial renderings, we were trying to create a tunnel that takes you up to the second level. Unfortunately, that's probably the one element that we were able to stick a little bit at the end. Here you see the end result. This was a fun project that we did earlier than that one. We called it Casa Pavoreal because the client picked a green, the house is green, and she called it a peacock green, so we named the house Casa Pavoreal. And I wanted to just, this picture in particular made there was a lot of influence in the design process, but you'll see why. This is the house, and the photographs are Diana's photographs. Her name is Diana Speed, and she's a photographer, she's an artist, and a great person to work with. She brought in a lot of talented people to work with this house, and this is her favorite photograph. And what you see here is basically an installation. This is a big window. This is the master bath. So we didn't want to just shield it with grit or anything like that. And so we wanted a component that would kind of shield the master bath. Which you can see here what happens inside of the master bath. This is a picture taken from the shower. So the shower is up against the glass actually. And the piece is called perforated. It's perforated 14 steel is called Where the Light Dwells by Tonya Vargas. And then the stair that you see here, that's Diana's piece, and she calls it My Steps, and it's painted steel. So we gave her the bones, we gave her some of the materials, the combination of things, and then she took it to the next level, which was amazing. And she must love the plant. It's called mother's love. Yeah, or snake plant, right? Snake plant. Yeah. So then funny story. So this is the stair. And then funny story. Lamia, the new owner of the house, she begged her. She's like, "You need to sell me the house because I fell in love with this house. This is exactly what we want." She sold it for less money than she would have gotten, but she sold it to Lamia because of this beautiful letter that she sent her. And then she called us like 3 years later. She's like, "I need a fence because everybody comes with this picture." So we're like, so what do we use as a fence? So we thought of this snake on the mother. And then it's just a whole bunch of things. And now it's after we can cover this strong. But we thought that would be appropriate for the house.
The different heights, right?
Yeah, and different. Sketches, renderings, and process. This is the result. The sketch was a result of a project that had already started. This was in North Carolina back when we started the firm. We had already presented to the client, and it's a 160-room resort in another beautiful site that you don't shoot and touch. It's just like you go there, you're like, why are we going to build here? So this is a sketch out of frustration. We came back to the trip and they were like, no, it's not there yet. You have to think differently about it. So we figured, okay, so we're respecting the land. We're building small footprints, and these are going to be just growing out those small footprints, right? So this was the end result. When we sent these to render, we started getting these images, and we just started playing with them to see how we would make this project feel like it's floating in the woods. And then this is an ongoing project that we're working with the church. Actually, I met Father Paul. Father Paul is he's from Burkina Faso in the Sahel. This is kind of like a section in Africa where the rainforest meets the desert. So it's like an in-between space where it rains torrentially for like 3 months, and then it's completely drought for the rest of the year. So it's a very difficult climate. And so we started working on this. The project is it's a technical school for the very first technical school for Burkina Faso, and it was tasked to make it happen, basically. Raise the funds and start building the university. It took us like 3 months to get the right site for him to set up the site, because a lot of this is a slow process. But once we get started, I don't know if you want to talk about these locations, but these are some of the thinking process behind Kere builds a lot there. He's a local, he's an architect out of Germany, but this is his hometown, so he uses a lot of the locals build their own building. So very influential. He's one Christopher project architect. And so we looked. The first thing that we did is we looked at his work, and we said, eventually this is going to have to get built, and it has to be done in the manners that he's been working. So campus, go through that through the sketch process, just get to the right form, This would represent one building, that would be like the very first building, the STEM building, and then this would repeat here, and then you would eventually start going into more organically than what you see here, but at least we're keeping a couple of the, maybe the big port Q and B in the building. So we immediately start working on 3D. We have to start seeing what this is going to start looking like, right? And what are the influence, what's going to influence the architecture. And in this case, it's basically water collection, is creating shading to the school. Yet it has to feel sophisticated because it's a tank of thought from computers and engineering. It cannot be open air. You have to continue working on it for it to look like a sophisticated building that attracts students. And then here's what we have so far. You can see how this is. We're beginning to think of all the buildings on campus. That will be the arrival of the first 10 buildings, which would be the one on the left or the right, whichever one we decide to place first. But to begin to create a courtyard that's so special, right, in these countries, and not only for congregation, but for climate reasons and so on. So that's what we're doing. And then finally, our Starchitects in Florida, and the reason I've been working so hard is because I always wanted to understand how to make one of these buildings. So we have KPF. I came first. That's the brick arch, which I think it was a very good design. It's simple but elegant. And then Faena House, which came after. And then finally, Mami Casa, which is a fairly, I think it's one of the most beautiful colors but I just wanted to show a couple of images of what's coming to South Florida or the new projects that I'm seeing. When I think of this massive buildings that we built here in Fort Lauderdale, there's some that stand out more than others. And I think that these two, my ODA, are one of my favorite designs that have come through the pages. I know this was getting built real quick. It's already quarters out of here. That one, I'm not sure about my favorite. And then we all love Ken Okuma and his work. This is something that is proposed for Miami. At AIA Design District. So really looking forward to that. I hope it gets built. And then finally, we have some people here that are working on this project. I heard. This is what's coming to the Chaplain site, where there was tragedy once. There may be something that comes out of the ground that will be beautiful. So with that, I'd like to thank you guys for.
How come they didn't hire Max and they hired you?
For that house?
Yeah.
Funny you say that because the house that you showed, we're doing an addition to.
I don't know if that's disrespect or just compliments to you. And it's.
I have to call Max and said that.
I was going to say, did you call him?
If we work with this, I trust him. But yeah, no, that was that's something that we found in the files, and I don't even know if Max knows that we kept it. That was a small project for him.
It was an addition to another. He did the wall to an old house, but it was just the wall that he did.
Yeah. Just to some of the younger architects in the room, it's funny. I'm at the stage now where I get some of my old boss's drawings, and I'm hired now to do renovations on those buildings, and it's like I don't call them.
So something to the architects in the room, the architects kept the wall, right? This is a beautiful wall. But to this day, it's a nightmare. I'm getting all kinds of emails that the wall is leaking because of the waterproofing. The waterproofing had to be done between the stone and the concrete walls. We're still trying to figure out how to
Is it the
like,
coral stone?
why didn't we just take it down and build it new? I'm like, you would have never built it the same way. It's not possible. So it happens.
Questions, so anybody want to ask questions?
Mr. Massa.
So, I hear the presentation, of course. I have a question more on the, because you mentioned how you guys were a bit, you stopped yourself from showing the project too fast, these sketches that you used for the client. So when do you really know when to show the first stages of your idea? Because I mean, it takes a second for you to just see what you want, just sketch it out. If you're confident enough to make something good, but then it's like, maybe it's quick with the client.
Maybe Lisa can answer that because we got a call today. They changed the project from us yesterday. You already do it this morning. I'm like, we're gonna show you.
Well, the problem is that in that case, we're doing the housing for the employees, right? We wanted to make sure that the employees of the hotel will enjoy the same space and the beauty of the area. So we thought that individual housing spotted in the middle of the mountain would be ideal. Obviously, that's very, very expensive to build. And so, obviously, the idea of the cabins being individual buildings in a very simplistic way, but layout in that way costs too much money. So, the idea of the cabins now is a building. But we try to keep the ideas of the walk-ins around it. But then, in a meeting, the brand tells us, but you're gonna have all the employees sweating with the uniform sweating. And so it's better that they cover the walkways and they protect. So it's a battle with the client because you have a dream in your head of how you could have the living an island like that one being enclosed in AC air conditioning. It doesn't make sense, right? So we're there negotiating with them how to keep the idea flowing.
So I'm always a proponent of showing it right away. Sometimes we have to wait.
Yeah, I would treat it like a relationship.
Anticipation that counts, right?
Just be an onion. You know, if you show your future wife everything you can be immediately, I mean, the bar is like here now. Like you can only go higher, right? Because if you don't, you're in trouble. So it's the same with clients. Little by little.
I can speak without microphone. I think
You can?
Well, say thank you. And I need to just give a comment on that, what you said. It's not all about renderings. I have seen a lot of sketches what you and your team did. Aquarelle, old style. Let me say it like that, and that's referring back to Arty, what Arty said, what you cannot draw, you cannot build. I love this old school, let's say, of not AI generated. Don't get me wrong, I use AI as well, I love it. But I also love the old architecture, that old feeling of sketches, of creating spaces for our clients by hand. And I think there's a different quality. I see a lot of quality dropping down from colleagues of us because they're not using this old technology, or let's say hand drafting and thinking about what you do, what you create. Thank you.
I have a theory about the hand drawing that sometimes works. I mean, it's this. When you hand draw something and you give it to somebody, that's a beautiful artwork, right? They imagine, the client imagine the best. While when you do the artificial intelligence rendering, that is so realistic, and if you don't get where he or she wants to be, if you don't catch her idea or his idea, they will immediately get very disappointed. While if you do the sketch in the beginning, a natural sketch, they imagine their idea, not yours. They're imagining because there's a lot of imperfection in human drawings, right? A lot of imperfection. But that's what helps them to to bring their ideas. So they start to get very happy about it. Not always, but I'm so surprised, and I admire what you were doing and showing us about the artificial intelligence. Because we have tried at the office with a sketch, and you can immediately get the artificial intelligence to change the prompt, because you need to do the prompt in order to get the machine to draw it, right? But you can also do another intelligence into the prompt, so it gets the prompt to, it gets perfection and perfection and perfection in that aspect, no? So but you need to have the right prompt from the client in order to get their ideas and make them happy.
I think there are different tools we can use as an architect. Both AI is a genius new tool, but also it is in the first stage of using it as a tool. On the other hand, there's, let's say, a pretty simple sketch where you're using a lot of what I love to create spaces and showing the client what is in its imagination. And that's what we can do. I love it.
There's an impressionist quality to it.
Exactly.
That you can refine from the concept of an impressionist.
I have a comment or a question. What if the client gets you the AI themselves and say, I want this building to be realized? Because they can do that. They can input text prompt of what they want, and they get the AI rendering themselves, right?
Yeah,
So
right. That's scary.
I mean, we've tried it, but we can't get to the quality of the images that you show. And because it takes more than just putting a couple of processes and a couple of prompts on the computer. It's a whole language that we have to develop in AI to be able to get to that level of presentation. So for clients, it would be, I think, that tonal architecture that we kind of
I still have to
get
bring it
that
to you.
It's a confidence thing though too, because I'll have a client that literally will just show me a Google image picture of a house, and they're like, I want this. And I'm like, great. And you can go on the records of the building department, you can ask them, you can download the documents and give it to a GC and go to town. They're like, no, but I want to hire an architect. And I said, okay, now we're talking. I was like, so I just let them believe that I'm going to give them exactly what they want. They want this house, right? And then I make sure I get the retainer, so I've learned that lesson. And then I'll give them what they don't know what they want, and then ultimately they realize why they hired you, right? Because now all of a sudden they're receiving a product that's been curated by you, and then letting them believe that it's their idea is the best. I lost my ego like a couple years ago. Maybe I didn't, but I had to, because I'm just like, listen, these are all your ideas. I just figured out how to make it happen, and that's like the best thing that you can do, honestly. Because if I take credit for anything, I'm a dead man. I'll probably lose the job. They don't want to pay me anymore, whatever. So I'll just have fun in my little office, and then I'll give them a product that they didn't want. They said they wanted this. I give them this. But because we're not talking about that image anymore, it's in the garbage. But I let them know this is everything that you talked about, right? And then all of a sudden they're just like, yes, it is. Okay, it's their idea,
The psychology of architecture.
Yeah.
On that first example that Jose was showing, the house, that we certainly took Paul Rulo's influence into account, and that was the first drawing, was, well, this is the opportunity to do this. Because of the complexity of the complexity of the site. We start doing the perfect proportions for a modern, linear, more horizontal house than anything else, which is more or less what your intelligence did in your drawing, very, very horizontal. And then we presented to them. And a realtor, in a weekend, because when you do this exercise with your clients, you're going to notice that if you give them the drawings on Friday, on Monday they have a new idea, a completely new one, because they do a party, they take some wine, and a realtor comes around. I'm married to a realtor, so the realtor comes around and they start giving opinions, and immediately the proportion of the house on Friday that came from a perfect proportion went to a house that needed to be 11 feet tall on the ground level and 10 feet on the second. When you change 2 feet and you start to change the proportions, the idea of that modern, tropical, romantic disappears. So that's the other issue. So it's a balance.
So that was
we need to be negotiating.
That was going to be my question. Are you as are you as architects walking around essentially scaling everything you see constantly? Because you're trying to sketch, and you're all saying I need it to be buildable. You're doing blocks, and you already know I can fit X amount of classrooms in here. How does that work? Can you not see squares and circles, or?
Well, we start doing that now.
I think it's just through the practices how you get to that, to understand symmetry and proportions and all the elements that are going to make the architecture.
But you're doing it to the foot. Almost. I mean, you're talking about as soon as the art.
Yes, you have to. It's a must. Yeah, it's a must. I learned very early when I did have a lot of hair. I did learn from one teacher something that caught me in my mind is you're a poet, but in order to be a poet, you need to know the language. You need to know every verb, every single action that the language has. So you need to, if you want to be a poet, you need to have the language. And that's more or less the description.
So it's trial and error. I mean, there's some that I'm not showing, but there's some, I mean, that things get lost in the process. And you go back, man, I could have been 2 feet lower. You don't tell that to anybody because everybody's happy with the final design.
We
You're your worst critic.
We did a list of the houses that we have done in Coconut Grove, and we arrived more or less to a number of 50. We have done more or less.
50?
From the ground up, it's almost 25. So in that process also, you learn a lot about what shouldn't be done, and where we made a mistake, and where the proportion went off, where the stair is not working, stuff that is only a practice that you
Do you see those buildings, the mycelium model buildings, and partial, what looked like an underground Chalcedonian kind of thing? Do you see those being built that way?
Well, the students told me, Professor, we have another semester, we'll design them better. So that was the graduating master, last topic was studio, and the studio agenda was to engage in the process with learning how to engage with AI to help you design each phase. So at the conceptual level, those volumes were very abstract and speculative. But the mycelium research, because I'm also into AIA, one of the directors. AIA is the Association of Computer-Aided Design Architecture. And when I go to the conference, 50% of the research, let's say 40%, on materials and mycelium has become a very kind of interesting material to explore. There's also certain elements like columns, and you can grow mycelium in different shapes and forms, and it can gain strength with certain qualities. So mycelium, I think, is being pushed to be like a future building material. And we can imagine future buildings with mycelium, and especially the students were speculating that a part of the project can be mycelium still growing and the baked mycelium and both qualities. So it was very speculative, but I do think in the future it can be.
It's cool as hell. I mean, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, but I think maybe to your question on AI, what it can give us and how much we can achieve and realize of these AI designs. I think that question is interesting because it can give us amazing renderings, like to your point, and now how do we actually make it work? I think for me, it saved me time to create an apartment, to design an apartment building in Florida where it's net zero. The process of design exploration was done with the AI assistance, and for me to run and to model it, and I had a student who was working in the modeling phase of it, and then I ran simulation of daylight and energy to make sure it's going to be net zero, and it was a great collaboration with the AI. So in fact, I think the renderings and visual representation that the AI can give us, we can take it and make it work. Because we're capable of doing other things.
The process changes, of course, but I think for me now, I honestly don't know how to design without AI. So I'm sorry.
You think physical modeling is okay?
Yes, I think it's like there's certain tasks that if you just do a concept and a sketch and run it, and AI gives you the volume, the massing, some design ideas, then you can move forward with it. So I think we're still maintaining agency, we're still controlling the output, but this collaboration can be super successful. Just it's a familiarity and a process that we can learn.
Everything's about speed now, you know. So when you hire a lawyer, you go see the doctor. It's like, how quick can you get out of there? How quick can you get me to document the information I need? And architecture is still in a kind of archaic realm, which we enjoy as artists, right? But the problem is that's another reason why we struggle to get paid, why we are not in the 1% and things of that nature. So if you can get over that and that doesn't bother you, then I'm happy staying in the archaic fashion and then enjoying presentations from people like her. But if we want to progress from a technological standpoint with the rest of every other industry, we're going to have it. It's not a matter of if, it's when, you know.
So if I'm hearing it right, it's really the artistry's still there, but the tedium of
Yes.
measure is done.
Right. Our minds will still think the creative way that it does, I'm sure. I have faith in that with incoming architecture students. But the methodology is, it's not going to be the way that, we're used to seeing and the way that we are trained for sure. And clearly I feel like that's more than okay. We're going to offend some Germans in the room. No, it's the same in England too. We got like more brutalist architecture than native. But no, we have no choice, you know what I mean? So unless you're practicing in a third world country, like, what you were, that case study with the African project. They literally, if you live there, you're building it. Kind of like in the medieval times, everyone in the community built the cathedral, and that's why it was beautiful and it's still standing today. You get Skanska, a multi-billion-dollar GC, build a high-rise, 20 years later it gets demolished. Go figure, you know what I'm saying? So it's a different mindset, and it's just going to progress, but you're going to choose to either run with it or otherwise live
Or get run over. Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to jump into this conversation you guys were having on mycelium. So there is already a home built with mycelium in Africa. It was made by the architecture studio called Red House Architecture.
Red House?
Yeah, based out of Ohio, Columbus, I'm pretty sure. They've done their research and backed it up, and they actually have built some homes in Africa for people who don't have homes, and they built it out of mycelium for a couple of weeks. Because mycelium is a fast-growing structure, so there's also other universities around the world that are already studying this. And I just recently came across something like a week ago about mycelium at another college, and they built these chairs, tables, and stuff at mycelium. It took them about 2 months. The mycelium was just growing over a couple days. I personally grew a type of homemade mushrooms. They were oyster mushrooms, and
We don't talk about
yeah,
that.
they were oyster mushrooms. They're not.
It's legal now.
Yeah,
It's legal.
oyster mushrooms are legal. They're edible. If you cook them, they taste like chicken. So that's why they're quite interesting.
Oh no, it's not had chicken, it tastes like chicken.
You can eat your buildings.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mushrooms and mycelium are quite interesting. The speculation behind the architecture is going quite far because NASA's actually investing a lot into it because of the technology it comes with. It's also been done in Chernobyl, so it's radiation proof, heat radiation. It's also fireproof apparently. There's research behind that. So it's interesting. It's quite speculative, but the research is going on. And something I just found on the way here is that the School of Parsons actually just opened an online 15-week program. It's $800 times counseling. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch who.
Parsons School of Design.
Parsons, okay, wow.
They just opened a 15-week online program. So it's $800.
Holy crap.
This was a great presentation.
That's fascinating. Thank you.
And so my second question is on this AI stuff. I know it's quite speculative, but like, what type of AI models do you guys use? Like, do you guys just use ChatGPT, or like, I know there's other companies out there, like, I know about this mycelium stuff, which is also being used by NASA. So I've researched a lot into that space with like space architecture. And so there's this company called Icon 3D, which does like their AI architecture rendering, and apparently it's already like rolling out, and like they 3D print stuff in Texas, and they have apparently a whole like town already being built with this AI designs. So I was wondering like what type of AI you guys use?
For me, I think the students' project were done with GAN models, generative adversarial networks, that I think have been outdated. So that was 2021, 2022. And then diffusion models, text to image models. So ChatGPT has DALL-E, and then there's Midjourney, there is stable diffusion. So diffusion models are those text to images. You input text prompt, you input image and text prompt, and there's a platform Runway now where you can also train specific concepts. So you feed it in images, and it can learn the concept in the images, and it can reproduce this particular concept. So we continue training diffusion models. This is also great. I've spoken to a global architecture firm, Perkins Eastman, where they invited me to give a lecture, and they were asking me questions on a workflow and process for AI-driven workflow. And they were interested in training diffusion models, stable diffusion, with their own projects, for example, healthcare project that they design. And then AI is great at interpolating, which means that it understands the language and the semantics of those images, and it can give you very similar yet not a copy of the previous projects. Which means it can save some time, so it can actually produce, based on this interpolation process, very similar qualities of designs, but also it's not a copy. So they save time, of course. So big architecture firms with their archives, they have their own training of AI models on their prior projects.
Also, if you're doing something like in a medical, you're making sure you interpolate it with medical language and understanding how people interact with the space and what the doctor absolutely needs for the space that he's in.
I think for them, the scale, the design, there's
You're getting scale of design out of your original drawings and things like that, and you're putting it in and then manipulating it. But it's just an interesting concept of like, so you also have AI in medical doing things that like, what's the best methodology for the doctors and the nurses and their patterns and what they need in like, like the marriage of those concepts.
But I think
It's like action and space.
for big firms like Perkins Will, I think I know a friend, she works for Perkins Will. She's also engaged in AI research for Perkins Will, and they do have their own method and workflow for AI training. And they have developed projects. Sometimes she showed me things that she said, Shermeen, I cannot share with you because this is still under development as a research. So I think big architecture firms, they have their own research teams where they're intensively using AI. I think maybe smaller firms and practices, it depends on how much passionate you are or how you see it as a potential.
And the amount of time
Yeah.
it takes to do it.
I think it's an easy process, at least maybe for me. But
Yes,
I think the hesitance sometimes is some people are just against it as an agenda, and sometimes we are questioning like our future as architects. And I do have a positive perspective to the AI. I think it's still a collaborator with us. I don't see the negative part of it. I think as architects we can use it to our advantage. So we can do more with a shorter time. We can accomplish a net zero, amazing, beautiful building design in a short time. So it gives us more time to create even more successful design, aesthetically and